And after a long pause, and I apologize if you're watching along with these as I make them, because I know I have been gone way too long, we are going back to the sixth chapter of the Darkangel, which is called The Riddling Rime. I I don't remember what's going on. There's wraiths. I'm just looking at the page. They want Ariel to kill the vampire. If I recall, she doesn't want to. He's too beautiful. Can you tell from my tone of voice that I don't love this book? Um, I hope that doesn't come through in the actual reading, just in my talking about it. Anyway, we'll pick up at the paragraph break. The wraiths say I must kill the vampire, said Ariel as she waded carefully across the lighted stream to the far bank, where the Darrow sat fishing a quiet back eddy with a hook of thorn, a horsehair line, and a rod of cane. Ariel sat down on the bank beside him. "What's that you say?" He asked sleepily, head nodding in fragrant white smoke of the little fire beside him. "Ah, well, I thought they would come to it." Ariel looked at him, puzzled, and he roused himself enough to notice. "Oh, yes, they asked all the others too, you know, the one before you, and the one before her. Yes, they asked them all, and they all refused. No, I retract that. One of them actually attempted it. She failed, of course." He shook his head. "The others, one of them took her own life rather than face it. Another missed her step on the tower stair and plunged to her death. Another died for loneliness. The last lost her mind and tried to run away." The Darrow glanced at Ariel. "Ah, that castle above is only death and death. Don't spend too much time up there, child. Come down to the caves. Here is life." At that moment Ariel saw a nibble on his line, and the little man fell silent to concentrate on hooking a tiny cave fish, barely as long as the hand is broad, and quicker than quicksilver. Ariel watched him in silence until the fish was caught and strung on the fish line, and the Darrow sat baiting his hook again with a white cave cricket. "I do not want to kill the vampire," she said at last. I want to save the race, but not to kill him." The Darrow glanced at her with upraised eyebrows and back at his rush pole quickly. "And how would you propose to do that?" he asked slowly, as if not greatly interested. Ariel gazed off across the lighted water and sighed, but she could see, out of the corner of her eye, that the Darrow was watching her intently as she spoke. "I do not know," she said, "but there must be a way." Her voice did not tense or rise with frustration now. She spoke softly and with conviction. "I am determined to find it." The Darrow eyed her for a long moment then. She did not turn to him, but continued to gaze off across the water. Then he, too, turned back to look out over the lighted stream. He shook his head. "A trace. Ah, daughter," he said, "it is a strange thing you would do. Perhaps it is possible, perhaps it is not. But granting for the moment that I might brew a draught that would render the Icarus insensible—" Ariel turned to him, startled. "You can do that? Make such a dram?" she asked. "But how?" He smiled a little then. "I am a son of Earth, child. I know a little magic." "But if you knew how this was to be done," she cried. It was the first time she had ever found herself angry with the Darrow. "How is it you have not done it before?" The little man shook his head again. "I did not say that I could do it," Talb answered gently. "I said that I might with your aid. I could only do the half of it. Another must do the rest." "But there were others before me," insisted Ariel, still angry and refusing to soften. The Darrow sighed a trace very sadly. Ariel saw a crayfish take his bait without being caught. "But think, daughter, think," her companion said. "What good could lie in such a scheme? He'd only steal the souls of 14 other maidens to refill his vials." Ariel looked away. Her anger had faded. "But," she murmured, "if he could be prevented—" "How, child?" the little man inquired, as solemn as Ariel had ever seen him. She watched him gather in his line. "Do you propose to chain him like the gargoyles?" "No!" cried Ariel. Her own vehemence surprised her. The Darrow laid his pole on the sandy bank beside him. "Tell me," he said quietly, "why do you not wish the vampire to perish?" Ariel drew up her knees and clasped them, stared off toward the wall of the opposite strand. She felt suddenly very cold. "I love his power and his beauty, the magnificence and majesty of him, his splendor and his authority, His surety? Her voice trailed away. The little man rose a bit stiffly from his sitting place on the bank and looked down at her thoughtfully. But do you love him, child? The Darrow asked. Ariel fell silent. No, I cannot. He is murdered, worse than murdered. My friend Eowyn and 12 other maidens. No, I do not love him. She closed her eyes, defeated. The wraiths are right. I know that he must die. The Darrow drew in his breath and let it out again, then nodded, as to himself. He stooped and drew his laden fish line out of the water, and stood twirling it slowly, looking at nothing and frowning fiercely, as in thought. Well, enough then, he murmured, as if reluctant. Well, enough. He must be stopped. That is decided, and if not one way, then another. Now, first task is to fetch the chalice hoof of the immortal horse. The blade, I think, I can attend to myself. And as for the apparatus... He muttered other things for a few moments then, things utterly incomprehensible to Ariel. At first she thought to speak, but then let it go, sitting there beside the quiet eddy, in the dimness away from the bright gleam of the fire. Though the water had a faint radiance of its own, enough to see by, Ariel felt suddenly sleepy. The Darrow seemed to come to himself presently. He shook his head a trace as if to clear it, and knelt on the bank beside Ariel. Began to fumble about with the many hidden pockets of his robe. He drew out a scaling knife and began to scale his catch. I will tell you a rhyme, child, he said. One I found in a musty old book lying under dust in the archives. It is a prophecy, not a prediction of what will be, mind you. He told her, no such thing exists, but rather a foretelling of what may be, a formula for the undoing of the Icarus. Ariel glanced at him, uneasy, surprised. I have not said that I will help you, she said, almost beneath her breath. The Darrow did not seem to hear. He stared down at her knees, the sand, the water, the opposite shore. His mind was torn, and she knew it should not have been. Her mind was torn, and she knew it should not have been. She should have longed wholeheartedly for the Darkangel's destruction, and she did not. I must think on it, she told the Darrow. Her companion nodded, turning the fish over in his hands and scaling the other side. Think on it then, daughter, he said. His tone was kind. At leisure, but learn the rhyme also. It is a good thing to know. This is the way of it. On Averick's white plain, where the Icarus now wings, to steeps of terrain, from tour of the kings, and damsels twice 7, his brides have all become, a far cry from heaven and a long road from home. Then strong hoof of the star-horse must hallow him unguessed. If adamant's edge is to plunder his breast, then only may the war-horse and warrior arise to rally the war-hosts and thunder the skies. There now, do you have that? The Darrow inquired. He had finished his first fish, put it in his sleeve, and started on the second. That is only the first 4 couplings, but so much will suffice for now. Can you say it back to me? Ariel made a clumsy attempt and swallowed a yawn. She wondered how long it had been since she had last slept. The Darrow gently corrected her wording, recited the poem again, and had her say it back. He slipped the second fish into his sleeve. As Ariel tried again, all 12 tiny cave-fish had disappeared into the pockets of his robe before Ariel got the lines recited 3 times correctly. Go now, the little man told her, and rest. You do not look as though you have seen sleep in a long turn of the stars. Ariel rose from the sand. Her limbs felt heavy, and her eyelids near shutting. Tell me, her companion inquired, just before she waded back across the stream. Do you understand it, the rhyme, I mean? Ariel shook her head, nodding sleepily. What does hallow him unguessed mean? She asked him. The little man was winding his horsehair line about the pole. It means to salute, or to challenge, or to pursue him, he answered, all unawares. Ariel frowned, puzzled. I thought hallow meant to purify or to bless. The Darrow shrugged his shoulders. His lips smiled slightly. Words can mean different things, mistress. Perhaps it is I who do not understand the rhyme. He gave her a rush from the fire for light. Go now and rest, and the sleep will fix your memory, and we can work more on decipherments when you return. Ariel nodded and smiled a little drowsily. She turned and held her rushlight high as she waded back across the stream. And that is the end of Chapter 6.